There is a particular scene in Act 1 or Episode 1 of Rurouni Kenshin that up until that moment had no context. It's the moment that Kenshin decided that he will now stay at the Kamiya Dojo. Prior to this, Kenshin was making his exit, and Kaoru stops him and she asks that Kenshin at least help her rebuild the dojo. His response is that he's no good to be around since he's the real Battosai, which she responds that she wanted the Rurouni to stay, not Battosai. Kenshin then says that he's grown tired of wandering, and so he decides to stay. The problem here is that Kenshin has been wandering for 10 years. Why all of a sudden did he decide that he wants to stay at this rundown dojo? Naturally, one may assume that the reason Kenshin decided to stay was because he was moved by Kaoru's willingness to see past the Battosai, and that might just be the reason. However, there's actually more to this scene that goes back further than Act 1 or Episode 1. That's from the future, but it's actually the past, in what is known as the prologue, Act 0. Granted, Act 0 is technically a future event out of universe because it was written for the 2013 manga Rurouni Kenshin Restoration Volume 1, but in universe it's sometime before Kenshin arrives to Tokyo and meets Kaoru. Act 0 is a one-shot story that tells a story about Kenshin helping a foreign female doctor from being harassed. At the end of the story, Elder, the doctor, takes a look at Kenshin's scar and she notices that Kenshin's scar is an old wound but says that it still looks as if it was just made yesterday, to which she adds, the body and the mind are connected stronger and more deeply than you think. Finally, she finishes off by advising Kenshin to stop for the next person who calls for him, and with that Kenshin smiles and says, this one will keep that in mind. The funny thing is that Watsuki notices the lack of reason for Kenshin suddenly deciding to stop at Kaoru's dojo. In the back of the first volume of Restoration, Watsuki had a page of free talk dedicated to talking about Act 0, in which he talks about the several things he wanted to make sure to cover in the chapter. As I was about to write the prequel, the following thoughts ran through my mind. He then lists several different things, but what's important for this topic is what he says when he gets to number 3. To fill the gaps of one element I missed. When he then explains what he means at the bottom of the free talk, he says, I elaborated on the common question of why would Kenshin, who wandered for 10 years, suddenly stop wandering in the first act? Elder, the foreign doctor, notices Kenshin's deep, unsealed emotional scar. Her kind advice has a slight effect on Kenshin, thus becoming a motivation for his behavior in the first act. Something like that. So there it is. That's the reason why Kenshin decided to stay in Tokyo with Kaoru. What do you guys think of this? I know Kenshin originally started in the 90s and Restoration was written about 15 years later. Have you guys read Act 0? If not, I recommend you guys check it out. Let's have a discussion in the comments, and thanks for watching.